Welcome back to the Jeremiah Show. After producing the first Peanuts TV special, Lee Mendelson, through Lee Mendelson Film Productions, produced nearly every Peanuts special for decades, establishing the beloved holiday and TV tradition built around Charles M. Schulz's characters. And more than 60 years later, the collaboration between Lee Mendelson and Charles Schulz and Vince Guaraldi. Vince Guaraldi. God damn it.
Gurr. Think of the dog barking. Guaraldi.
Oh, I thought it was Guaraldi. Guaraldi works too, though.
Guaraldi.
Yeah, either way.
I'm gonna start from the top and Guaraldi. Guaraldi. Welcome back. After producing the first Peanuts TV special, Lee Mendelson, through Lee Mendelson Film Productions, produced nearly every Peanuts special for decades, establishing the beloved holiday and TV tradition that so many of us grew up with, built around Charles M. Schulz's characters. And more than 60 years later, the collaboration between Lee Mendelson, Charles Schulz, and Vince Guaraldi. Once I started thinking about it, I'm going to screw it up. I'll go back to it. I won't make you guys wait. Vince Guaraldi still stands as one of the most meaningful partnerships in television and music history, a legacy that Sean and Jason Mendelson proudly carry forward today. Sean Mendelson and Jason Mendelson oversee licensing, preservation, and distribution of Peanuts TV specials and archival restoration of music, including Vince's recordings. Jason Mendelson is also a part of the Peanuts productions, and together the two brothers contribute to archival projects, soundtrack releases, and as I said, the preservation and promotion of the Peanuts legacy for modern audiences today. Jason and Sean Mendelson are my special guests today. Welcome, guys.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you. And I want to point out your grandmother was brilliant and knew that all you need to get what you need in your life is 5 cents. Much like Lucy with her psychiatric advice for 5 cents at the booth, your grandmother knew that most of life's wisdom could be purchased for 5 cents at the flea market in the form of Charles Schulz's great tomes of wisdom in the Peanuts collections that you got as a kid. And it's the same thing for us. We grew up surrounded by the books, the TV shows, the merchandise, and the paraphernalia of Peanuts that allowed us to embrace his philosophy. And Charles Schulz both helped pick out my name before I was born and Sean's name. Sean's middle name is Charles. And we've had that connection with our family to the Schulz family for over 60 years. And we couldn't be more proud of that tradition and legacy and that philosophy that both Lucy and your grandmother were able to procure for those 5 cents.
Well, Lucy was a wise girl, and my grandmother was a wise woman. I'll agree with you on that one. I had forgotten that Lucy only charged 5 cents. Don't you guys? You remember the days when things were 5 cents, like in the neighborhood, like a lemonade or a garage sale book. That's
it's not inflation adjusted. Never has been, never will be. Wisdom is there for everyone to partake in, and again, we can't go a day without hearing a reference, whether it's in serious things like politics or in the sports world, where someone hasn't had the football pulled away from them, like Charlie Brown has experienced Lucy over and over again. And again, this is the philosophy upon which our life and our business is created and built upon, and it endures. And I think part of the fun of this for Sean and I is to celebrate and to hear stories like the one you shared about being a child and finding that entry point through Peanuts into a different world that still resonates, whether it was when we were children or you were children or our parents were children or our children. And so one of our big hopes is that by preserving and celebrating all of the shows and the movie, that next generation gets to enjoy that same thing, whether it's 5 cents or not. I cannot attest to that. The hope is that the wisdom is still everlasting and accessible.
Yeah, it's good wisdom. It was a great find. I really feel like it was a treasure, and it opened up, as I explained, such a great world to me, and was my companion for so many years during childhood. I mean, guys, to hear that Charles Schulz picked out your middle names and it was a part of your family, that's such a long, deep legacy, with that you've grown up around and with. How cool! How much do you guys love what you do?
Well, the irony is that I was the black sheep of the family because we have two other siblings, Linda and Glenn, that have worked for our father as well for decades since the 60s and 70s, working on these Peanuts specials and other documentaries our dad worked on. And I didn't want anything to do with Peanuts. And it just happened that 5 years ago when Jason worked with Bill Melendez, the animating wing of the Peanuts, to find these tapes. And so the inception of me with this company was that the music had this new life, this afterlife, this Guaraldi renaissance that we've been writing for the last 3 or 4 years since Jason and I produced It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown in 2022. And we've now have 9 soundtracks almost in the next month or so of the 8th and 9th soundtrack of Peanuts released at our stewardship, our custodians. We consider ourselves custodians of this music. And so it's out in the world now. And the legacy part, like you mentioned, is our dad worked with Schulz and the animator Bill Melendez and Guaraldi all the way until each of them successively passed away. So they had a creative partnership their whole life, and it became the North Star for Jason and I as we continue to this legacy, because family and the tradition of it and making sure we get it right when we produce these albums for the public so that we're honoring those men. It's been a real joy for Jason.
And we couldn't have a better job in that it has touched everybody. Your story is beautiful and profound, but it is not unique in that people have found Peanuts in different ways. And every time we meet somebody we've been doing a lot of record stores. We go to a lot of record store events or do other public speaking events for people. There's always somebody who has a connection that's brand new and we hadn't heard before. Or the most exciting thing, which I didn't think was going to happen, is it's their first time finding Peanuts. And it's maybe their first time finding a jazz record or their first time finding a vinyl record at all. And so we get to share that first experience with the people who it's new for, while also celebrating and reveling in the stories that bring people into the Peanuts world in their lives. And that's always been true our whole life. And Sean just mentioned he was never the black sheep, but Sean is a profound and proficient musician who's created his own musical works and his own theatrical productions and has his whole own artistic creative insight and life. And when he came in to work on this, he wasn't that he was outside of it. It's that we didn't really appreciate how magnificent Vince Guaraldi's work really was. Even though we've grown up with it, worked with it our whole lives, we knew about Charlie Brown Christmas. But what Sean was able to bring into this as well is that joy of discovering, in some cases, his music for the first time all over again, which is kind of a Yogi Bearism, but it is true that the beauty of this is it's everybody's. Everybody can appreciate it. Everybody can revel. As you pointed out, it's a sign of childhood, and you hit it right on the head. And I think it's so funny because you remarked about how it was both sad and hopeful. Mm-hmm. And it is that dichotomy and that duality that makes this, I think, so profound and so everlasting, because it is both those things. Both the TV shows and the music are both those things.
And I think that's what our dad, when he heard Cash or Fade to the Wind and matched that in his mind to the sound of Peanuts. I always like the anecdote. My sister Linda always thinks that Cash or Fade to the Wind is sad and melancholy. And I think it's hopeful and uplifting. And there you go. Case in point, that duality that is there in the stories that Schulz wrote.
And that's the beauty. And that's the beauty of Charlie Brown. No matter what he's doing, he's often failing. He's almost exclusively failing at everything, but he never gives up. He gets back up again. He doesn't find the little red-haired girl, but he keeps trying. He never kicks the football, but he keeps trying. He doesn't find the way to win the baseball game, but he still manages that team even when they're not participating. And I think that is something that everybody can identify with. And again, you asked, is this a joy for us? Is it fun doing this? It's the best job in the world because it's everybody's. There is nobody that is antagonistic to this or alienated by this. Everybody thinks the characters are speaking to them, the music's speaking to them, because it does. And there are so few things in this world that can bring people together and be that universal. And so to be part of something like that, even in a small way, is incredibly satisfying and joyful for us.
You know, it's incredibly satisfying for me right now is talking to the two of you and hearing how excited you are about what you do and how you've built your life around this Peanuts and Charlie Brown and how it's so universal to all of us and loved by all of us. You talked about right there in that opening about Charlie Brown not being able to kick the football's pulled away from him. Well, how relatable is that to all of us every day? We feel like that, but we get back up and that's a lesson that's learned by Charlie Brown at a young age. Get up and try again. It's so impressionable at a young age. So Peanuts explored themes of resilience, as we talked about, in the face of failure, quest for friendship and belonging, childhood anxiety and self-doubt. There were philosophical reflections and hope amid adversity. The Peanuts world, though, was created in a simpler time. Why do you guys think the characters and their stories still feel so relevant today?
Well, for me, I'm a children's music artist as well, and the part of the inception of me becoming a children's music artist is there was so much pandering, and not to take anything away from Barney, everything was just one note, and that's how children's music should be. And what Schulz opened up with his comic strip and then with the TV specials is that we shouldn't pander to children, that they're more than just happy-go-lucky, out of sight, out of mind for parents of that generation. And he tapped on that, and it's a timeless quality to be able to express characters that have their own opinions, that have varied opinions. And the fact that adults don't get to speak in the show is a very cool, calculated move, so that we're in their world and we're brought into their world, and we get to have a sense of connection to our own childhood, regardless of how old you are when you're watching it, when you see these characters.
But their world they're not typical children. Maybe they are. Maybe that's the point. Maybe what Sean is saying is that children are sophisticated and not simple. And that is what Charles Schulz put in these characters. They think about serious things and have serious thoughts. And the irony, of course, is in A Charlie Brown Christmas, one of the first scenes is Charlie Brown visits Lucy, because the entire show is based on him feeling not part of the spirit of the holidays. He's ostracized, he's alienated, and he doesn't know what he's supposed to do about that. And so when he first visits the psychiatry booth with Lucy, she tries to diagnose his problems. That's where I learned those words. The Latin words for pantophobia and agoraphobia and acrophobia all were learned by me as a child watching A Charlie Brown Christmas. And it's because he's going through something he can't quite deal with. And that's something that, again, is a universal experience. And that's what the music is too. The music that Vince Guaraldi wrote is simple and is accessible, as Sean always says, but it's also a lot deeper and more sophisticated than that, because it brings in those feelings that we all feel, but aren't maybe super able to articulate. And that's why I think that's for so long. So anyway.
Yeah. And the popularity is so strong. And you mentioned the things that you mentioned right there that are what people love and have become connected to or connected with. The studio in the beginning thought it would be a failure, right? Because they didn't like the jazz. They didn't understand that. They didn't understand the children's voices, the real children's voices. A lot of those characteristics that made Peanuts so popular, that we all grown to love and cite, were things that studios didn't think they weren't going to make anymore, right? Until it took off.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer had aired the year before in '64, and CBS was looking for something to be similar. That could be a holiday show for children, to bring in an advert. They had Coca-Cola and the McCann Erickson ad agency lined up that wanted something like that. And my father had been pitching for a year the documentary that never aired. And so when they called and said, "We still don't want your documentary, but do you have something, for Christmas?" My dad said, "Of course I do." He hung up and called Charles Schulz, and Charles Schulz said, "Hey, did you sell the documentary?" He said, "No, but I just sold a Charlie Brown Christmas." And Sparky Schulz said, "What's that?" And my father said, "Something you and Bill and I have to put together this weekend." And that's how the whole thing began. It was on a accident. It was we need something. And
the promo reel, right? They showed the promo reel, and that's
it. They had a few pieces of animation that Bill Melendez had done for the documentary. The only thing, ironically, that came out from the documentary was the record. So the Boy Named Charlie Brown record that Vince Guaraldi did for Fantasy Records was a huge hit. It came out in '64 and was a huge, musical release. But that's the only thing that came out. So they knew they had the pieces. It was this my father always called it serendipity. There were all the people in place, and then they had the necessity of, this now is the summer. We have to get an entire television show done for Christmas. And to answer your question, that was the beauty of no one could make them change it. Schulz wrote it. Bill animated it, Vince scored it, Lee put the stuff together, and that was what they had to release. So when CBS first saw it, they said, "This, what you just referenced, why are there children voicing this? Why aren't you getting stars? Where's Burl Ives, like from the other show? Why aren't you doing? Where is the Warner Brothers soundtrack? Where's the classical big symphonic music?
Right.
Where are the jokes? Where's the laugh track? And what is this thing you're doing about reading from the Luke? Where are you reading from the Bible in this show?" None of that was really appreciated, but it was too late for them to do anything about it. So it aired, and the rest is history. All of those things that were against the grain are what helped make it special. And it's all because the power of Charles Schulz's characters and his ability to say, "I wrote this. This is my story. This is what we're doing. I'm not changing this." And I think that's what made it so powerful and so everlasting.
I know there was a collaboration between the three men, to put out this special and the others. How much do you think your father, what was his input in regards to some of the things we're talking about? Do you know if he had strong ideas about that as a producer, strong ideas about the music, obviously he chose,
Yes.
and sound? I mean, go ahead.
I'm really proud of the fact that he took the risk, and the risk being jazz, because jazz was implemented sparingly. It wasn't pervasive, and if it was used in shows, it wouldn't be the score throughout multiple specials, if you will, or movies even. And Schulz was a classical enthusiast, so Sparky, as we call him, or Charles Schulz, he would have probably preferred having classical music because he just was more of an enthusiast in that regard. But our dad was so moved by that Cast Your Fate to the Wind and Guaraldi, and he had talked to Dave Brubeck previously, but he was unavailable. So he always knew that jazz in some way would work. And their relationship was so personal that he called our dad when he wrote Linus and Lucy and said, "You got to hear this." And our dad's like, "We'll hear it tomorrow." I was like, "No, you got to hear it now." And he had this whole theme thought out based on his the inspiration he received from Charles Schulz's work. So on top of that, the kids' voices, that was, like you said, it was revolutionary too, to a certain extent. I know my dad had a big part in that as well. So while he did, I believe, implement these innovations and is a big part of the success and the timeless quality of A Charlie Brown Christmas and everything that followed, he also was really good at delegating and understanding what everybody else was good at. And so he stayed out of Schultz's way, stayed out of Melendez, the animator's way, and let them basically do what they were born to do, basically.
And I think Lee first was a salesman. That's the job of the producer. He was the guy who got the people together, sold the show, and figured out ways to make everything work and smooth everything over. But I think especially for that original production, I mean, first of all, you mentioned at the beginning, and Sean mentioned it in his opening remarks, these men worked together till the day they died. Every one of them was working with the other one until the day they passed away. And that's unique in and of itself. Part of it was they weren't really part of the Hollywood system. Bill had been at Disney and at UPA, but had done his own company and was in LA, but was sort of independent. Lee was in San Francisco. Charles Schulz was in Sonoma County in Sebastopol at the time. And Vince Guaraldi was in San Francisco. They were not part of the establishment. Mm-hmm. And so when they went to make the show, our father also was the one with our older brother and sister's mother, Barbara, found the little fir tree, the Hans Christian Andersen story, and they came up with that idea and put that into the story. They also came up with the idea to do, like Sean mentioned, the jazz the way it was. But each of those men had their own contribution where they said, this is how it's going to be. So Charles Schulz wrote the story and insisted that they have the Linus tell what Christmas is all about. And Bill animated it the way he could, because only he could figure out how to take these 2D characters from the strip and make them work in the animation world, in the cell animation world. And Lee also, he tried to find, and I'm stealing this story from Sean. I apologize, Sean. But part of the thing was when the show first was made, the opening waltz is Christmas Time Is Here. And that song that Vince had written and recorded, Lee said, you know what? I think it needs some lyrics. And Vince goes, I don't know, do that, find somebody. So he called everybody. He called the Sherman Brothers. He called everybody. Nobody was available. So he sat down and in 5 minutes wrote out the rhyming couplets on the back of an envelope or a napkin, depending on how you hear the story. Mm-hmm. And that lyric now, along with that song, has been covered 22,000, 24,000 times. Wow. And it was done by accident, out of necessity. But he contributed the lyrics to that song, which opens the show. So I think there's a lot that I want to slightly correct you. It's all four of those men contributed in their partnership literally until the day they passed away. And I'll lead into something here, which I'm sure you're going to get into. But the beauty of that was 1965. The beauty of that relationship the first one who we lost was Vince Guaraldi. And Vince Guaraldi passed away February 6, 1976, 11 years later, almost not even. And the day he passed away, he'd gone up to record It's Arbor Day, Charlie Brown, in San Francisco at Wally Heider's studio. He'd been there for a couple of days. He laid down the last few songs and he drove to his regular weekday gig at Butterfields in Menlo Park. And during the gig, he passed away. And with the same two gentlemen who played bass and drums, Seward McCain and Jim Zimmerman, on the recording session. So he was the first to unfortunately pass away. He was only 47 years old. It was 50 years ago, last month. But he died the day he recorded the 15th Peanuts special. And that was on the air a month later. And I don't think they knew what to do. That was their first joint loss of something like that, because the four of them had been together on every one of these. They'd done the movies together, the TV shows together. And so when that happened, it was the first sort of jolt of this, isn't the way it was, but we're going to keep going and making more together. But that occurrence was not expected, and for Sean and I, one of the joys of the last few years is we found that original session. We hear him talking on the day he passed, and we hear him putting the music down the day he passed. And it's been on TV. It's been available ever since on the TV show. But now you can hear that on the record. And, I can't, Sean gets mad at me when I say this sometimes, but I can't listen to it without crying because it's very emotional. And Sean and I weren't even born yet when that happened. So we're talking about something that predates even our life, but we've grown up with this great tradition that we get to celebrate. So
the one sentiment I want to echo is that the last day of his life, he was doing the thing he loved, recording, writing, and gigging and playing out music. And as a musician myself, to be doing something that is the love of your life beyond your family and your health, obviously, is the thing that gives you purpose. And although it was tragic, he died at such a young age, I think it's pretty neat that we've been able to document his last day in this recording studio. As morbid as that might sound, it's very special to us, And I think
if we could all be so lucky to
that's what I wrote in the letter.
We leave
that's
this
what
work.
The letter notes, Jeremiah.
Yeah. We leave this earth, if we can leave it with doing something, especially at the end, that is what we love, what we dedicate our lives to. That's pretty amazing. And Jason, why does it strike you? Why do you get so emotional from that song? I mean, I do from songs all the time, so I'm with you. I'll cry when a song affects me. So I relate to that.
A lot of them move me. The particularity of the song is called Rain, Rain, Go Away. It's not the nursery rhyme. It's a song that he composed. It's nothing like the nursery rhyme,
which we're going to play in this interview.
Oh, fantastic. So the first time he recorded it was for the second Peanuts special. So Charlie Brown Christmas was the first show in 1965. In 1966, the second show was a summer offering called Charlie Brown's All-Stars. So in Charlie Brown's All-Stars, Vince ran a bunch of songs together that he kind of used. He'd composed a lot of them for the documentary a couple years before, but then, on one of the original songs for that was this Rain, Rain. And the show was my dad's favorite show. It didn't have all the pressures that Christmas did, where it was their first show. So the animation there's a lot of action. The opening is Charlie Brown running through an entire neighborhood of houses to catch a fly ball. It's a baseball themed show. And at the end of the show, he's about to win his first baseball game, but it rains. So the music needs to be explaining everything that's going on in this scene of defeat being snatched from the jaws of victory. And it does that perfectly. And Sean will tell you in a little bit about how it works musically. But for me, I always remember as a kid hearing that and loving it. And then one of the things we've done is we put together a symphony with David Benoit, who did a bunch of our scores for my father and myself on our later shows, using Guaraldi's music and his own music. It was my favorite piece of music to work on again and revisit, even though it was 60 years old. And the beauty of it is he played it in 1966 for the second special. He played it on a Warner album he released called Oh Good Grief for a longer 3-minute version. And then he played it only for Arbor Day. He'd saved it until this next baseball show in 1976. So when he plays it on Arbor Day, it's 10 years of emotion later. And so I'm getting choked up. We're talking about right now. When I hear it, I know how interesting it is for a man to do a theme that's my favorite, just my bias, right? Other than the Christmas music, have that go for 10 years and pick it up again and record it the day he passes, not knowing he's going to pass, and revisiting something. There's something amazing about your second release. It's your last release. You don't know that. it's not really in between. And it's to tie together this feeling you get. And I coached baseball. I love baseball. It's one of the passions in my life. So when I hear this music, it makes me think of rain. It makes me think of inability to do something. And it makes me think of that triumph in the face of defeat, or the opposite. And so anyway, Sean can tell you why it's cool music.
Jeremiah, have you seen either Field of Dreams or The Natural?
Both.
So
Yes.
Those are both baseball movies, coincidentally. And as a musician myself, the scores, the soundtracks to those films move me. The little theme that you hear when
Roy Hobb or Ray Kinsella.
James Earl Jones stands in front of the truck, comes out of the cornfield in Field of Dreams, or when Robert Redford hits the home run. It's the chord changes. It's unexpected chord changes that didn't exist before those films. And with Rain, Rain, Go Away, you have these very unexpected, they're not jazz chord changes, they're not classical chord changes, but what they do is they put you in a transcendent, heavenly mindset. And I can't agree with Jason more. This song is probably one of my favorites too, because it doesn't sound like any other Vince Guaraldi piece of music. And it is grounded in something that is intangible, whatever that word is. And so it's again, pretty astounding that he recorded it on the very last day of his life. This version, he recorded it.
Can you talk about the brushes and sticks too, both in terms of Christmas and Rain, Rain?
Oh yeah, so there's a full band version of All Stars when it's the mid '60s. He after Charlie Brown Christmas's trio, he brings in horns and like Good Grief, he brings in horns to accentuate Charlie Brown's embarrassment when he loses the game. The horns are being blasted as Charlie Brown's laying on the ground. But the Rain, Rain we get from the end of his career with Peanuts, the 15th episode is a delicate raindrop like timbre. You hear the keyboard playing ding, 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 ding. Again, rain falling on Charlie Brown at the end of a baseball game in the special, and then the band comes in delicately with a little bit more of that original trio sound that Guaraldi cultivated from the 50s prior to his work on Peanuts. So it all came full circle 10 years later.
Isn't it incredible how music is magic like that?
Yes, it really is
beautiful. And artists like Vince that can capture that and convey it where we're talking about it here, and everybody's getting emotional. Well, your father, Lee Mendelson, he passed away on December 25th in 2019. He was 86, and he passed away, the story goes, that I read, just hours after watching the 55th anniversary of A Charlie Brown Christmas. And how does that make you guys feel that your father watched hours before he passed on what he had created so many years ago? That was his final act, so to speak. Almost like the story you just told about Vince doing what he loved in the final song.
The beauty of it is it's terrible, right? It's still terrible for me.
The beauty of it is it's terrible.
I was hosting my family, about 30 people that did come over that night. We spent the morning with our father. He'd passed in his sleep that morning, but we got over there, and the next night ABC was running Happy New Year, Charlie Brown, and I had a call with them, and they put up his picture and ran it before the broadcast.
Wow.
The next night, he'd been unwell physically for a number of years, so we should have been ready for it, but we were not. I think he was not ready when Vince passed. I was not ready. We were not ready for his passing. But the beauty of it is driving to be with him, in effect. They were playing Christmas Time is Here on the radio as I drove up, right? It was on Christmas. And the night before, we'd also just done, the San Francisco Symphony had done every year and continues to do it, a Charlie Brown Christmas Symphony. And I'd just been to that, and they always had a different opening. So I just gotten off the phone with him the day before, telling him how great the differences were, because he couldn't get to it anymore to see the show. And again, I worked with him every day, so we were part of, it was definitely something that he was appreciative of. But again, it was just another year of another broadcast of Christmas. At the time, ABC would run it at least twice a year. So ABC would run it usually the 1st through the 5th of December. And invariably, they needed to fill another hole, so they'd run Christmas again. And it always did terrifically well in the ratings, no matter when it was on TV. I think he appreciated always the impact that show had had. It afforded him and then us the ability to do all the things we've been able to do in our lives. But I also think that, like I mentioned earlier, he'd given it to the world with Sparky Schulz and Bill Melendez and Vince Guaraldi long before that. So for him, it's just, another airing, another appreciation of that great piece of music. And again, it's grown. I think Vince Guaraldi is more popular now than ever. And, at the time, he was a jazz artist in a rock world when he passed. He wasn't as successful as he should have been. And now, again, we're hoping we celebrate him in this capacity. But go ahead, Sean.
I just quickly wanted to say, and I just mentioned this I was on Record Store Days, Paul Meyer's podcast with Jason, which is airing in the next week or so too here, because we're releasing for Record Store Day an album, but we'll talk about. I mentioned that I grew up sort of away from it all. I was mortified by Peanuts. I didn't wear the swag. I didn't put things on my wall at all. And then I actually absolutely would say I had an epiphany, which is, it was probably even a couple months before my dad passed away when I was talking about my role at Lee Mendelson Film Productions, and he was saying how the music is really a big deal. And I said to myself, it was like I stopped being mortified and I started being prideful, and it was like a switch where all of a sudden everything my dad did I respected. I had so much pride. I looked at it from a different angle. And I was able to impart that to my father. I had lunches with him regularly before he died. But after he passed away, I felt like putting on a cape or a cloak and saying, I own this now. I'm going to serve his legacy any way I can and talk about it. That's why, like you mentioned earlier, we love talking about this. It's a joy to talk about our father's life's work and Vince's work. And so we couldn't be happier.
The only regret I have with all of this was he'd asked me to see if we could let people know Vince's legacy and work beyond Christmas before he passed. We did a clip show. That's the wrong way to put it. We did an anniversary show for the 50th anniversary of Charlie Brown Christmas on ABC. And we had every musician we asked to be in it agreed because they loved his music, wanted to be part of it. And it was a great joy for me to do that with him. We did that together. But I couldn't find, I'd looked in the wrong places for ways to exploit, and I mean that in the best sense of the word, to celebrate his music. It's only during the pandemic where we were kind of stuck. And Sean and I have been working on making, with our mastering engineer, Vincent Hudson, we've been making mastered versions of the music from the TV shows, final edited masters, for a couple of years, just so we had an anchor point for this music, for the recordings. And when Sean and I first discovered the sessions, and I want to be clear for your audience, what I mean by that is we'd always had the show master, which is the show's music track stem to go with the show, right, for all of the specials. What we found was the original recording sessions, meaning the stuff they laid down in the studio before it was edited to be on the final show. We'd had that the whole time. We just didn't know we had it. It was in our vault and we'd never pulled it out because it was sort of shoved in the corner when they first made it in the 60s and 70s. So when we found that, the first thing I thought was, oh, great, we can sort of start over and work from these new masters. But the second thing that Sean had this epiphany. We heard the first one we found. And he said, you know what? This isn't just for what you want, Jason. This is you can make an album out of this. You can make a soundtrack album out of this that's viable. And I didn't think that because, again, when I think of soundtracks, it's movies, it's 2 hours of music, whatever it is. Our TV shows are 25 minutes. So for me, it's like, well, the music isn't wall to wall, although sometimes it is. The question became, well, does anybody want to hear this other than us? And at the time, we didn't care. We wanted to hear it. So we spent most of that first year of the pandemic just listening to this music again, including the flubs and the outtakes and the cutting room floor stuff and anything else. And what we realized was, oh, this is really cool. And we think it's cool. We'll see if anybody else thinks it's cool, but it's cool enough that we're going to spend our life the next year diving into this and playing with this. And that's what we did. And every time we found something, we would think of our father and go, first, I'd be like, why didn't you find this, Dad? You should have done this 20 years ago, 30, 50 years ago. But secondly, why isn't this more well known? And that's part of the question was, and I think this is what I was talking about a little bit ago, the music was for the TV show, right? And he wrote it for the TV show. He wasn't trying to he did his own records at the time. They weren't super successful because the world had moved in a different direction from 60s and 50s jazz. And I think the 70s, while he adapted to that for the TV show and his other recordings, it wasn't aware of his greatness. And so part of the joy of this was, wow, this is pretty great. And it's great in different ways on every single special. every single special is its own special, its own cartoon, but also it's completely its own soundtrack. And I think that's what we were reveling in. So, Sean, you can, whatever you want to add to that. I threw everything out I can think of on that front.
Your father's, I wanted to mention this before we go on to my next question, but your father's personal and cultural documentaries focused on artists and musicians and creative figures. 1963, his documentary about baseball legend Willie Mays was titled A Man Named Mays, was very well received and kind of set and established your father as a thoughtful filmmaker. He also covered Vince Guaraldi and Dave Brubeck. So I just wanted to mention that. And, some of his other work, so people could find that and explore that. What did you guys most admire about your father?
For me, my dad was the two most impressive things were his ability to tell stories. He could go into any room, and this goes for working with Charles Schulz and the Peanuts and behind the scenes, the meta aspect of making these shows. But in an interpersonal way, when I saw him with families, strangers, anybody, he put people at ease because he's the ultimate schmoozer, and I put that in the most positive way. Like Jason said earlier, he's was a great marketing person or businessman in that respect. But not only could he tell stories, he was really good at reminding me. I remember as a teenager when we traveled and were fortunate enough to go to Europe and different parts of the world, to always find out other people's stories, ask questions, learn about other people's lives. And so I try to impart that to my children. So those are the two biggest things for me, is that he was really graceful with storytelling, and he was really adept at learning about other people, made people feel better because you ask about other people's situations.
Mm-hmm.
He also was described by many people as being very generous, but also in his loyalty. And this is true of Melendez and Schulz as well. My father worked with people, and if they left him to go to bigger and better things, they would still always come home again. Where one of his best friends, Chuck Barbie, was his cinematographer and director of photography. He came back and worked with me, 50 years later on stuff. David Benoit is to this day working with us on stuff. Everybody that he was involved with, he was still involved with throughout his career and his life. And I think even if things weren't always 100% or perfectly copacetic, there was still that ability to come back and work with those people. And that loyalty is what allowed us to do what we do. Even now, Sean and I have made a bunch of new friends in the last few years. A lot of those new friends are the people who played on these records, the sidemen who were the musicians on these records. Sean sought them out and said, "Hey, we found you. You're on this record." No, we've known they got royalties as musicians for the TV show forever, but we also found an interpersonal connection with almost every one of the living sidemen, and would then get to hear their stories and sharing what they remember working on this stuff. And that's all Sean. Sean found all of them and connected us with all of them.
And they all talk about our father with such respect and reverence, including Phil Roman, one of the first Mexican American animators. He talked profoundly about how our dad took a chance on him when other people might not have, even though he already established himself with the Grinch. He did a few Peanut specials, and then the same thing with all these sidemen. Stuart McCain, who plays on It's Arbor Day, Charlie Brown, a lot of the 70s shows, talked about how kind our father was in the studio, and no one ever said a bad word about him professionally. So that's pretty cool.
It makes it really easy for us to work on all of these things because all these people who are still with us are still interested in it because it has a fondness for them, which allows it to be really easy for us because we're very fond of them. And the fact that they're into it makes it wonderful. And it also makes it important that we do as good a job as we can to honor those people and their memories and legacies as well. And so we put a lot of time into making sure, like I said, originally Sean and I did this for ourselves. Like we didn't have any intention we had no expectation, I should say, of releasing any of this music anywhere when we found it. We just wanted to have the music. Yeah. And so when we finally put it together and people really liked it, now there's another expectation which we enjoy of, we're not going to only celebrate this, but we're going to aggrandize this as much as we can. And so I think that's been really satisfying. But to answer your question about our father, I mean, he was my best friend. We did everything together in my adult career. He was a inspiration on not only the creative side, but just on the chill out side. He was much more chill. Sean is now the chill out person in my life. When when we aren't very chilled out all the time. But it is very much about, are you doing something you care about? Is it good? Is it a force? Is it not a force for evil? Is it a force for good in some way? And if it is, then do it. And if you love it, do it. And that's what he did. And to your point, he's most well known for producing the Charlie Brown cartoons and the Garfield cartoons. But he also, most of his life was dedicated to telling those stories in his, what he called docutainment or documentary entertainment production.
Infotainment.
And he did that with aplomb, and he found people who cared about things as much as he did. So he did a thing on the national parks and wild places with Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. He did 2 movies with Henry Fonda and John Steinbeck, because John Steinbeck trusted him. He did all the stuff with Charles Schulz. He did scores and scores of movies about arts and movies and entertainment that he really enjoyed. I don't think he ever did a project he didn't enjoy, and I think that made it.
Ask you, but I know we don't have any time. We're running out of time because I know Sean has to go here in 1 minute.
I'm going to give you 4 minutes, but if you don't mind, I'll just blast off all the information.
I can stay on.
So let's get to the album, because I know this is a very exciting moment right now. I have to cut out most of my questions for you. But one of my questions was, when your dad came home from work, most dads come home from work and they're stressed out and it's hard. And did your dad come home joyful and happy from what he did, loving what he did?
Yes.
Okay. So there is new Vince Guaraldi music release coming out, and they're holding it up right now. If you're watching on the YouTube, the pallet just came in, the delivery just got shipped.
Just 10 minutes before this interview.
10 minutes before. He's showing the album cover right now. The Peanuts music legacy is growing. A newly restored album featuring music by Vince Guaraldi. It's Arbor Day, Charlie Brown's All-Star, and Charlie Brown's All-Stars. The original soundtrack recordings are scheduled for release on March 20th, coming up here in 10 days. The album presents the complete original sessions, recordings from both specials for the first times. All right, guys. 2025 marked the 75th anniversary of Peanuts. By the end of Schulz's career, 2,600 plus newspapers ran the Peanut strip. It appeared in 75 countries, and the book sold tens of millions of copies worldwide. Charles M. Schulz created 17,897 Peanut strips, over 50 years in the making, from October 2nd, 1950 to 2000. The final Sunday strip was published on February 13th in 2000. Charles M. Schulz passed away on February 12th, just one day before its release. The Vince Guaraldi's Trio's soundtrack for A Charlie Brown Christmas has become one of the most beloved jazz albums of all time, selling millions of copies and even being inducted in the Grammy Hall of Fame and the Library of Congress's National Recording Registry. Peanuts continues to evolve. Sony holds the majority of the brand's rights right now, but the family of Charles M. Schulz still retains 20% ownership. And they expect to expand the brand globally through more animation, streaming, games, merchandise, and new productions are on the way, I hear. Did you guys say anything about that?
Yes, the Schulz family has been making new productions in recent years, and they do them on Apple TV. And they preserve the legacy in that way with some new ideas. And they have some other, I think they have some features coming, and they have the Apple TV versions coming. And I think they're going to be really exciting too. For us, and let me let Sean, do you want to say, I know Sean's going to go, I can stay on. I keep going to give you.
I just want to do a push of our brand new album. It comes out on March 20th, ahead of the baseball season. Both Charlie Brown All-Stars and It's Arbor Day Charlie Brown are baseball thematic, and there's 2 versions of baseball theme. One is called Flat and Pat in the new episode, but it's very much cool that it bookends his Peanuts outpouring. Except for Charlie Brown Christmas and Jazz Impressions, it's 2 ends of a career that show his development from acoustic pianist to an electric pianist on the Fender Rhodes, as you'll hear more pervasive on the later album. And of course, we talked about Rain, Rain, Go Away, and we have a single called Young Man's Fancy. But you also get to hear Snoopy Seeds for Thought, which is a retooling of Joe Cool. And that's a kind of cool thing about Vince, is that he took a piece of music and repurposed it in different ways, like Peppermint Patty and Linus and Lucy are used 8 or 9 times throughout these things. But what I really want to point out is I'm a climate activist, and we either use a method called bioattributed or biovinyl, where 90% reduction in carbon footprint to make both the record store day double vinyl release or the one that Jason's holding. That one is bioattributed, I believe. I might have them mixed up right now in my mind, but it's all in honor of Earth Day, Arbor Day, reducing carbon footprint. And every time someone purchases any one of these albums, CD included, $1 goes to the Arbor Day Foundation in a place of need. And I'm just going to say now, you can edit this out later. Thank you very much, Jeremiah. I know Jason's going to continue with you.
Let me, if I can, Jeremiah, each of these records, this record is made out of industrial waste, and cooking oil. So this entire record is a different process than the normal PVC process. And it has, I just got this, so I haven't even seen this. I'm looking at it for the first time. I mean, we made it, but I haven't seen the actual.
Opening it for the first time.
It's very cool. So again, each of these comes in, this is the first time we've done this. It's a gatefold album. So you get, because we didn't want to reduce the covers. So you've got Arbor Day and what would have been the back of Arbor Day. And then on the back is All Stars, and what would have been the back of All Stars. And then you get all of these cool, this looks, I'm not even kidding. I've literally just opened this for the first time. So
well, it's like Christmas for all of us that are here with you.
It is. It's a new holiday for everybody. So you get this thing, which is the liner notes, which has, in this case, it's a 6-panel trifold. So you'll get the picture of Vince from that year. You'll get art from the show. Sean does a musicology, an essay liner note. Derek Bang does an essay. He's the Guaraldi historian and biographer who wrote a book on Vince Guaraldi. He writes his note. I have a small introduction. You get stuff from the boxes we found. You get all this great stuff. And as Sean said, every one of these that you buy plants a tree. Every CD and record this year that is purchased will plant a tree in a place of need with the Arbor Day Foundation. And you can also watch the show on Apple TV. It's a really great special. It's all about Arbor Day and the kids celebrating it and planting. And they overrun Charlie Brown's baseball field by planting a garden there so he can't play because there's flowers and trees and everything growing. But it is, we're very proud of this. We have Obies on all the vinyls that have, all our other records, and then the tree growing. And then, as I said, all the things we did that are cool. So,
what's great about that, Jason, is that I would spend hours also looking at album covers, and when you could open them up and you have the linear notes and you've got things to read and look at, and just kind of hold that and spend time with that while you listen to the record. That looks like what you guys have just created. Looks like something I could spend hours with.
Well, that's the joy of this, is that all of these releases get to celebrate those 4 men we were talking about. So this is the Bill Melendez animation. It's the art from the originals from the show, based on all the stuff Charles Schulz drew in the strips and all his stories. You get the history lesson in the essays is all about not just the music, but the history of that TV show and how it fit into the Peanuts universe and milieu. And it's very interesting to me because the other thing we didn't really talk about, but the Peanuts television shows were very unique. They were always a special. They came on television on CBS with that special designation. They weren't a series. They weren't a movie. They weren't a whatever you'd call it. They were a special, and they were special. They were 25-minute bites of that philosophy of Charles Schulz we were talking about, and the 25-minute bite of Vince Guaraldi's scores or Bill Melendez animation. And we hope that you get to physically live in that world. Part of the fun of this is, I had been doing a lot of vinyl collecting in recent years. I have all of our old records, and I had some records I'd saved, but I wasn't as into the physical like everybody else. Everything is instant and immediate gratification. And my oldest is now going to be 14 next month, and I have 3 boys, and everything is instant, right? Everything is, say the name of your device, play my song, whatever I want, go. And there's none of that forced experience that I had as a kid of getting a CD or getting a record and having to see what the artist's concept was, and that rare occasion where you had a full album that was great and you could enjoy. And so in coming back to this, my kids are now all into vinyl again, and they're into, oh wait, they wrote more than one song from that album. Oh wait, I listen to it in a certain order that's prescribed by the artist. And so with the case with these, it's the same thing. It's jazz. There's very few, on this one, there's no vocals. Very few of the songs have vocals, but you'll get this score that we always put in the order of the show. So this is the order it was presented in the television show. And then there's a couple of bonus tracks that are cutting room floor on this one. And the same with this. There's only a handful of songs that we made into medleys that repeat in the show, but you get to hear the story. And it's the story they put together for the TV show. And then we think it's also a story Vince Guaraldi's telling in this presentation, in this order of his music. So you get all of those stories with this stuff. And that's true of all of our albums. And I think that it speaks to people a lot of the time. You know, there isn't always perfect. Some of the songs are on All Stars, Charlie's Run is 10 seconds. It's just the drum track that as Charlie runs through the neighborhood. But we leave it on there as it was performed because it tells that story as an opening piece. You know, it doesn't meet the rules. It doesn't make the length that it's supposed to make for an album, but we don't want to mess with that. We want it to be what was originally created. And then, as I said, on almost every album, we have bonus tracks that are things that have, in many cases, never been heard before, ever. They were on the cutting room floor, or they were in a demo, or they were somewhere else, and you don't get to hear it. And then even the part that's the main score is the unadulterated performance where it doesn't dip under the dialogue or get truncated because it cut the scene short. It's the full performance of whatever we've got. And we think that that's pretty special for most of the audience. And most people seem to resonate with this. It's you could put it on, and like you said, you can read the liner notes. In some cases, liner notes might be longer than the song, but you can sit there and enjoy all of that and get a little bit of a history lesson, learn a little bit about the artists and what their background and intent was. And then hopefully when we get these all out, you'll have this whole history of that decade plus of the early Peanuts shows and their music to celebrate that whole history and that time when these specials were special and unique and expected every year. And the beauty of it is everybody knows Charlie Brown Christmas, right? Everybody knows it's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown. It's part of the culture worldwide, especially in America. The hope is something like this. I don't know how many of your audience remembers it's Arbor Day Charlie Brown, right? It's sometimes people would make fun of us on SNL or in Living Color, other shows going, you know, it's make your holiday, right? It's whatever the holiday is, it's a lesser holiday. This is not a lesser holiday to us. Arbor Day is an incredibly important holiday. So is Earth Day. And with all of our records, we've been trying to make them as sustainably as we can. And so part of it, as soon as we knew we could make these records and be a record label, one of the first things we wanted to release was It's Arbor Day, because I knew it's that song that makes me so emotional, Rain, Rain, Go Away. But also it's to celebrate the earth and to celebrate what even in 1976, Charles Schulz was very passionate about, which was planting of trees and preserving our forests. And it's the same message my father and Bill Melendez carried. And again, Vince wrote the music for this. And every time you get one of his records, you're planting a tree. So we think that's pretty cool.
Yes, very, very cool. So pick up on March 20th. You can pre-order it now on your website.
Yes.
But no matter what, mark it down. March 20th, newly restored album featuring music by Vince Guaraldi. It's Arbor Day, Charlie Brown, and Charlie Brown's All Stars.
Thank you. And let me just make another quick pitch. It comes on CD. The CD's plastic is made out of recycled water bottles. So the non-paper parts are all literally from old like Coke bottles and water bottles. The vinyl, these bio-vinyl ones, there's a green, forest green, and the black one I showed you. Those are made out of bio-vinyl, so made out of cooking oil or industrial waste. And then we have another special one that comes out that Sean was showing you. I'll try to hold it up here. Hold on one second. It's this. This is all opened up, so give me 1 second. This is only for Record Store Day. So if you want to wait till April 18th, there's this one, which is a clear 10-inch record for Arbor Day with a baseball print. And then there's a baseball glove shaped 12-inch cut down for All Stars, which has similar liner notes. But that one is, that one you have to go to your local independent record store, which we also love to work with, called Record Store Day. And it's only on April 18th. So we think that one will be pretty fun too. But all of those will be available in the next month or so. And like I said, and it's also digital. You can get it on all the digital places too if you want to listen to it. And
I love your excitement. You got the record. You got a copy already. And you mentioned Record Store Day. You can go to recordstoreday.com to check out more. Also go to jot this down or go to mendelsonproductions.com. Jason, it's been so much fun talking to you. I love what you guys do. I love your life, and keep up the great work. Keep spreading it to generations to come. And I'll keep going to those yard sales looking for more treasure.
Telling your grandmother knew it well. And the hope is that then for our grandchildren that they get to enjoy it the same way that she did and that you did and that we did. But thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. You did such a wonderful job. You knew everything about everything, which is great because I didn't have to remember anything. So this is fantastic. Thank you very much.
Well, it's like I said, it's a passion of mine too, and I'm so happy for you for what you guys are putting out and what you're releasing to the world. I think it's so important. That people say this all the time, but more than ever right now, it's important to have, to find these connections and find these things in life that inspire. So thank you, Jason. Thank you so much.
Really appreciate
it. All right. Listen more and evolve and go pick up this new album. Again, what is the album name, Jason?
It's a very long title. It is Vince Guaraldi's It's Arbor Day Charlie Brown and Charlie Brown's All-Stars 50th and 60th anniversary editions.
Thank you, Jason and Sean Mendelson. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you.